Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 64, otherwise known as season 4, episode 7. And I'm your host, James J. Edwards. And with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing good. Just getting used to recording at night.
Yeah. Yeah, we're recording at a weird time because tomorrow's Easter, and we kind of wanted to let the Easter Bunny do his thing. And so, yeah, we're staying up late, if you can call 7:15 late. Also with us is your other host, John Correa. How you doing, Correa?
Doing good. And you know what? Tomorrow is an important holiday because it's the one day I'm not working. So I can give thanks to our true Lord and Saviors, Godzilla and King Kong. So that's how I'm spending my Easter Sunday, of course, at the drive-in safely.
Yep.
We've also got a special guest this episode. Usually we bring our guests in, or not usually, but a lot of times we'll bring our guest in at the midway point, but we're going to bring this guy in now because I think he's going to have a lot of cool stuff to say in the What Have You Been Watching category. So we've got Paul Farrell, the co-host of the Dead Ringers podcast and the Scream Addicts podcast. Is that right, Paul?
That is right.
Got all that right. Awesome. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing good, man. I'm happy to be here. Appreciate y'all inviting me on. So thank you for that.
The reason we invited Paul will become clear when we get to the second half, or it's already clear to you if you read the title of the episode.
It's a celebration.
It is a celebration.
If you just click play, you're still going to have a little bit of suspense because we'll be talking about something that Paul shares a love of with us later on. But for now, what have you guys been doing? What's been happening this week?
I've mostly been working on this weed award show I'm ADing on. So that's been interesting. They haven't been long days, but I was surprised it finally happened because I don't smoke weed. Nothing against it. Just, I'm already fat and lazy. I don't need performance enhancing drugs for that. But they did some testing with some influencers of different products. All I know is the studio got hotboxed and I was just sitting there doing some paperwork or something. And I realized, oh shit. So I'm going to have to step outside for a little bit, guys. I'm getting body high here. So it made it a struggle to come back home that night. This was yesterday, actually, I should clarify. So it made it a bit of a struggle to come back home and watch King of the Monsters and then Godzilla versus Kong before we record this episode. But I did it. I stayed awake.
I have watched a couple of things that I got screeners for. One is a movie called The Yellow Wallpaper. Have you guys heard about this?
No.
It's actually an old feminist text, a short story that has been used, as basically an indictment of the 19th century patriarchy and how women were treated back then. It's been adapted probably 20 times into short films, plays, features, TV shows. And this is a new one. It's a pretty creepy movie. It's beautifully shot, and the score and sound design just kind of weave together perfectly so that you're kind of like, wait, is that running water have a beat to it? Kind of a thing, it's that kind of a thing. My only issue with it is it kind of strips the feminism angle out of it because it takes away some of the ambiguity of the short story. So you don't basically, it's a great indictment on 19th century medicine, but it's not so much the patriarchy like it should be. But it's worth seeing just because it's a beautifully made movie. I just don't know. It's not going to be shown in any women's study classes.
That's unfortunate. Could you imagine Slumber Party Massacre with all of its feminist overtones stripped? You wouldn't have a movie.
No.
Slumber Party Massacre is a better feminist text than this version of The Yellow Wallpaper.
Big words.
Yeah.
But back on the drive-in, last week I saw that Bob Odenkirk action movie, Nobody.
Yeah.
How's that?
It was badass, is what it was.
It looks like he's a badass in it.
He is.
That's awesome.
He may be a nobody, but he is a badass nobody.
Everyone's badass in that movie, flat out. Even RZA finally gets a good action scene. I was excited about that. The casting is amazing because you got so there's Bob Odenkirk, Christopher Lloyd, RZA, Michael Ironside is in there. That was unexpected.
Love Ironside.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, love him. And it was it was by some of the John Wick dudes, so of course it looks really cool, and the action choreography is insane. yeah, no, just every time shit goes down, like you do not forget it. But also it really goes with what, kind of these sort of these kinds of movies like Death Wish try to go for, where it's supposed to be about like Joe Schmo who like starts using violence, and like the fatal flaw in a lot of those types of movies, like between the remake and the originals, is that it's like the actors portraying supposed to be an everyman were like action stars, so it kind of takes a little bit out of it. But Bob Odenkirk has pretty much almost always been a comedy actor, so like it really leans into that, and and it feels thematically right.
Do we need a Bob Odenkirk versus Kevin James movie? Since he changed his
I'd be down for that.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin James was pretty unsettling as that neo-Nazi in
Becky.
Yeah.
Becky was a surprise, a good surprise.
Oh yeah,
a welcome surprise.
I'm with you on that.
There was just so much to like with Nobody. I mean, they did a lot of the formula when it comes to these type of action films, like you were saying, when it's like, it's the badass who retires to have a normal Joe Schmo life, and he's struggling with it, and then gets pulled back in. I guess I'm, back type deal. But they really do a good job of playing around with it and having it be realistic. Like in the beginning, when he's living his Joe Schmo life, you spend a lot of time in there. You spend a lot of time seeing his day to day and how he's having these real relationships, with his kids. And there's no real one thing I really respected about the movie was there's a part where after, he has his first like kind of getting back into action-y type of stuff. And he has an honest conversation with his wife where he's just like, I miss you. We haven't, been intimate in a while. And usually with these type of action films, it's like, I just did some action-y stuff. I'm filled with testosterone. Let's go have sex. Caveman, testosterone. But they don't do that at all. Like they actually take a moment to have like an honest conversation of just like, what happened to us? Like what, like what's been going on? And they just have this like kind of moment where they're both like, yeah, I guess we kind of forgot about us. And then like they walk away from each other. Like there was no like, I'm filled with testosterone and I'm reclaiming my, my woman at this moment. It was like a genuine moment. And yeah. And then of course the action was fucking awesome throughout. I really do hope they make a franchise out of this. I want sequels every 2 years. I want spin-offs. This was Christopher Lloyd's best role in 10 years. Oh yeah,
dude shines.
Yeah. I want him to get a movie. I want him and RZA to get a spin-off movie together.
And it feels like it's in the John Wick universe. So, there's crossover material right there.
So do they call the next one Somebody? And then Everybody?
Yeah.
And in terms of home video stuff, I got some cool new releases from Vinegar Syndrome, including one of my favorite recurring Grindhouse movies from the New Beverly, Death Promise. Have any of you guys seen it?
No.
I haven't watched it yet. I watched the other two in that pack, but it's on my to watch shelf.
Yeah, no, this one was a lot of fun, and I do kind of have a soft spot for it because it was one of the last movies I saw at the New Beverly before the pandemic shut down. And it was so popular that they were actually going to play it again in March because so many people wanted to see it again, but, pandemic hit. But yeah, it's like the ultimate Grindhouse movie. It's got like everything you expect from a Grindhouse movie in one movie. Because so it's basically about this martial artist and his friend, and like and there's like this evil like real estate group with these 5 landlords who are trying to push them and their families out of the apartments they live in, and so they start like hiring thugs to just beat people up and ruin the apartments by like throwing rats and stuff around. But since they're martial artists, they just beat the shit out of them. And then the landlords have one of their dads killed, so now it's personal, and they decide to go out for revenge, and they team up with like an Asian martial artist from their dojo. And yeah, because there's a lot of martial arts, there's blaxploitation, there's vigilantism, there's revenge. It's just got a bit of everything Grindhouse, and it's set in New York during the 70s, so it's got that 42nd Street style feel to it.
When was it made? Is it a period piece or was it made in the 70s?
Oh no, it was made in the 70s. 1977.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if they were doing a throwback thing or if it was because it was actually made then.
Oh, no. It's 100% legit. And I also love this tagline. Filthy rich landlords get away with murder. It's time they pay for it. Like, this movie is just the ultimate anti-landlord movie. Like, even in the movie, like, there's a narrator who talks about how shitty landlords are. So, just whoever wrote it probably had a issue with landlords, which, considering the time and setting, was probably justified.
Yeah.
It's just such an entertaining movie. It could feel almost like a Black Dynamite type of movie, even though it is an actual, like Grindhouse movie.
It almost gets to the level of parody with it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, there are some scenes that are funny in their own way. Like in Streets of Rage or Double Dragon, like there's always like that one boss who's just like is just like he's just a big guy with a knife or something. Because this movie has that. It's like they reach a boss level and there's just this big hulking dude with a knife who rips his shirt off and starts screaming at them.
Is it kind of like Raw Force in that way? Like in
that's another good comparison.
Yeah, and well, I mean, Vinegar Syndrome almost like has the market cornered on these like obscure Grindhouse oddities, but that are the most entertaining damn things you've ever seen. And that's one of the many reasons that I love to just blind buy what they put out and dive into it and just let it wash over me.
Oh, same here. Like, this is one of the rare instances where I actually saw the movie beforehand.
Yeah, I do the annual subscription to Vinegar Syndrome, and so like every month I just get this box of strangeness. And I never know what's going to happen, And my wife's always like, "Oh, is it Vinegar Syndrome night?" Like, because usually I do Fridays, and she's kind of like, "Do I want to stay up for this? I don't know what this is."
What's this movie called? Oh, it's called The Severed Arm That Kills You While You Drive.
Oh man, The Severed Arm is so good.
Oh, that's a good one too. I love that one.
Love The Severed Arm. Yeah, that was one of Brad's sort of babies that he tracked down, and because he had been talking about that movie for years, but he I mean this month in general, I haven't watched that one yet, but I did check out Rush Week and Last Gasp, which were the other two in this month's package. I mean, so Rush Week is a very, very, it's 1989, so it's sort of like at the end of the cycle, right? Like it's dead at this point. It's already been recycled. It's getting a little meta. We're kind of going into the 90s, and it's changing. And this is just sort of, it really does feel like the last gasping battle cry of the slasher, of the 80s slasher. It's very sleazy. It's like so tropey. Like every single character and every plot point is a trope. You can see who the killer is a mile away. I mean, you could look at the box art and like, okay, I know who the killer is. You don't even really have to watch the movie. But it's the other great thing about it. It's fun. It's a rush week at a college. There's a reporter who's investigating murders. The murderer actually weirdly gave me Black Christmas 2019 vibes. He kind of has that.
It had
look.
jaundice.
Yeah. And
2006,
right, not the 2006 the new remake, not the supernatural stuff of that movie, spoiler alert, but it's sort of the look of how they did the killers in that one. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was
like the robe and like
it very, very fraternity-esque. Like it looks like a fraternity guy who's going to some sort of ritual. A lot of shameless nudity, a lot of shameless, sort of violence. Although I have to say it wasn't as gory as you would expect. You could tell it was kind of low budget, very socially tone deaf, but pretty damn fun. Like if you're having a few drinks and you just want to watch kind of a cheesy late 80s slasher, you could definitely do worse than Rush Week. Last Gasp was a wild ride. That movie was, in every sense of the word, a Vinegar Syndrome release. It is, again, this word's going to come up a lot when you talk about Vinegar Syndrome, but very sleazy. It's a whodunit, kind of a whodunit flick that involves like possession of this native tribe. So you've got Robert
Patrick.
of Terminator 2 fame, who basically travels the world collecting artifacts and things, and he there's this tribe in this country, you know, and that he kills a guy, and that spirit sort of possesses him, and kind of can take over and makes him want to kill. So you've got like this weird sort of possession thing, but it's presented in this sort of noir-esque intrigue kind of movie. Like there's literally like a PI that's hired by this woman whose husband's missing, and she's kind of presented like a femme fatale. Like it really feels like it's trying to be a neo-noir in it, like, but it doesn't, by someone who's only ever seen like magazine articles about what noir is. Like they don't really fully get like what what tropes they're trying to utilize. So it all feels very, very like shadows projected on a wall of that subgenre. But it's very fun, and it feels very like it's sometimes it's a slasher, sometimes it's a possession movie, sometimes it's a noir movie. It is not cohesive at all, but the damn thing just moves, man. Like you're just with it. Like it's so weird, and so much shit is constantly happening that you don't have time to be angry about how little sense it makes. And there are some good gore sequences. There's some fun effects. Like it's just, again, it's one of those weird Vinegar Syndrome oddities that I would never, ever defend or say is a good movie, but I enjoyed. I had a good time with it. So like definitely a fun Friday night, have a few beers kind of movie.
And was that was during like that post Terminator 2 era for Robert Patrick, where he was just like couldn't like find another niche, you know, like he was trying to like not do that role, the T-1000, but
yeah, and yet he still just played the same character in every damn movie. Like he's just the same guy. Like he's the stoic, kind of serious, scare, like trying to intimidate you, man of few words kind of character.
Except for Fire in the Sky, he was.
Oh yeah, I was just about to say Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, he tried a few things. I'll give him that.
Another screener that I watched that I got was for a movie called Honeydew. Are you guys familiar with Honeydew?
Ooh, I've heard about that. It's
kind of crazy. It starts out, it's this couple who they're camping, and through a series of unfortunate inconveniences, actually, they end up at this farmer woman's house with her son, and then it just goes off the rails from there. It's a crazy movie. It gets a little weird because it does weird things with like hallucinogens and drug trips that I thought was a little unnecessary. But it's when it's actually this couple, you know, it's kind of like they're meeting the local yokel kind of you know, the inbred
House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah, it's kind of when it's like that kind of a story, it's pretty compelling, but then it just gets really, really, and it should have ended about 10 minutes before it did. But it's one of those movies that like ends and then it gives you all this extra exposition and you're like, oh, just let us figure it out. But it's a pretty suspenseful movie. It is. There's a few things they did really, really well as far as just like keeping you leaning forward on the edge of your seat. And you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. You know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably see that at Panic Fest next week.
Nice.
Cool. Panic Fest is doing a virtual festival, but yeah, I've been wanting to see that. I had a friend who saw it at I believe the Nightstream Festival and spoke very highly of it. So it does sound interesting.
Spielberg's son plays the male lead.
What?
Yeah.
Ooh, well done.
I think it's his son. His name's Sawyer Spielberg.
Huh.
And I saw on IMDb it said that it was his son, one of the trivia. So unless whoever wrote that trivia was wrong. But you know, yeah. So we not only do we have Schwarzenegger's acting, we've got Spielberg's acting. Like, you know, Schwarzenegger's kids and Spielberg's kids are.
And Scott Eastwood is out there somewhere.
Ah, yes. Eastwood's kids doing it too.
Oh, and Wyatt Russell, he's Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, Peanut Butter Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I guess I'm the one who has to ask. We all saw Godzilla versus Kong, right?
I was saying this is gonna lead into our topic. So do we want to go there now? Let's do Godzilla versus Kong.
Yes.
I was being such a good boy and holding off and seeing it. I was going to see it tomorrow at the drive-in for the first time. Because, you know, you always want your first time to be special. But you bastards all saw it before me. before we recorded, so I had to watch it on HBO last night at like 11:30 at night.
I couldn't resist.
I was there at 12:01 the night that it premiered. Just a happy coincidence. I happened to have insomnia that night, but I was one of the first to watch it.
Oh, I'm going to be doing that for Mortal Kombat. Like, are you kidding me? I'm going to be sitting there with like energy drinks.
Waiting for the clock to tick past 11:59.
And then you play the Mortal Kombat theme song from the 90s as your alarm.
Dude, my neighbor's going to hate me.
I did get a visit. I was in the front room and I did get a visit about 5 minutes in from my wife who was trying to sleep. She's like, "Oh, can you turn that down?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Godzilla versus Kong. How much down do you want it to be?"
Oh, man.
I can turn it up.
I ended up putting the chair right in front of the TV, so I didn't want to disturb her, but it was Godzilla versus Kong. I had to, I had to hear it.
That's a movie that needs to be heard loud.
Maximum.
But what'd you guys think?
I loved it.
Loved it.
I had a lot of fun. It delivered what it promised.
Yeah.
Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
Just those, it was really cool that Adam Wingard was directing, and you could definitely see some of his fingerprints on it, especially the neon. But
so much neon. It was beautiful.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Real feast for the eyes.
Yes.
But I thought it was a solid MonsterVerse movie, and I did like how it kind of drew on kind of both of the franchise headliners, because you got a lot of the Godzilla stuff, you got a bunch of the Kong Skull Island stuff, and it actually mended together pretty well.
But it was absolutely Kong's story. It's Kong's arc, and Godzilla just came in and fucked shit up every once in a while, but it's totally Kong's arc. And I actually liked that about it, because I like Skull Island is probably my favorite of the new MonsterVerse.
Same.
And I don't know if it's because Kong is more expressive, but I feel like they're, as much as you can, a kaiju monster, they're developing his character pretty well. Kong has got a pretty good, you know what Kong's thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I think,
sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You can go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that opening where there's that musical montage of how Kong starts his day.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. And then they pull a Hunger Games on you. You're like, what? I don't want to spoil anything, but I feel like everybody has seen this, though. I had a review of it that published on Friday, 2 days after it opened, and I felt like it was already old news.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting with this new model how we can all sort of experience these huge movies all at once together. And I think there's something special about that. I think that makes the experience more exciting. Like, a bunch of my podcast buddies actually timed our watches for like 7 p.m. that Wednesday night. So we didn't like live tweet it. We watched it, but we were all watching at the same time, and it just kind of felt fun to do that. And I agree with everything y'all are saying. I mean, for me, I agree that Kong Skull Island is pretty much my favorite. And I think Kong has an unfair advantage in that he's an empathetic character that's emotive. I mean, Godzilla specifically doesn't emote. That's like part of his thing. Toho, even that's part of their clause. They don't want him to, with them using him. And I think that gives the movie an advantage in a lot of ways, because there's something to give a shit about and to invest in story-wise. You can actually tell a story. I mean, Godzilla King of the Monsters suffers from the fact that it's really difficult to tell a story without any empathy towards these giant creatures, right? They're just these big monsters fighting each other, and they're angry, and that's fun to watch. But after a couple hours, if there's nothing else other than that, it doesn't always stick. And then people love to, there's this whole debate raging right now about the human stuff. Like, does it matter? Should it matter? Like, are we allowed to criticize that? I mean, one, who gives a shit? What you think is what you think. Nobody's wrong for either loving it or hating it. But in my opinion, I think part of the reason it works better in Kong or Godzilla versus Kong is they remembered that the movie's supposed to be fun, right? Like, these aren't supposed to be these deep, dramatic looks at introspective character stuff. That's just not really going to work. And I think Godzilla King of the Monsters attempted to do something more serious, and it didn't land because they didn't have enough time, effort, or energy put into that plot line to make it land. So in this one, where you've got like a podcast guy going on a misadventure with children, like it understands, okay, this is kind of silly. Let's let it be silly, but still allow the people to progress the plot.
And wasn't that the most accurate depiction of a podcaster in a movie?
A guy who thinks he's so damn important.
Awkwardly asking someone to be a guest, constantly saying, "Oh, this might be the last one." No, it's not.
Belly of the beast.
As opposed to the podcaster in Halloween. You're a documentarian. You're not a podcaster.
Yeah,
podcast worth $3,000 to give to them. Like, what? That is the most bullshit.
Totally.
I watched a movie about an unkillable killer who can like be stabbed, shot, can transfer his evil to other human beings, and yet I'm going, well, the podcaster with that much money, that just doesn't make sense. I can't.
That's what took you out of it.
He can blow up in a house and walk away, but the podcaster with $3,000 to give his interviewee, that's bullshit. I can't. I'm sorry, Ryan. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, and on the other side, I liked because it was kind of like two separate plot lines in that regard. Because you got the Godzilla crew, and then you got the Kong crew, including Alexander Skarsgård and the
Rebecca Hall.
Oh yeah, and Rebecca Hall. I thought they did a good job with that, and the deaf little girl who's kind of Kong's best friend.
She was incredible.
Yeah, she was great.
She was awesome.
And one of the things that I really appreciate, especially with Kong, is we got to see Kong grow old. We've never seen that before because he always dies.
Yeah.
So it was really incredible to see Old Man Kong and really see them, because what was it? I think one of the special features that they had on HBO Max for it, Adam Wingard was talking about how in previous movies, there was always the blonde woman that he's in love with. But at this age, he's not looking for a love partner. He's looking for a family and stuff. And they really did a good job of driving that home throughout the movie with G and Rebecca Hall's character. Skarsgård it was interesting to see the attractive Skarsgård son be goofy for a while.
Yeah.
That was
awkward and kind of offbeat and not knowing how to sort of present himself. And that was cool, putting him in that sort of position.
It's like, dude, I've seen you in Tarzan. Like, I know how jacked you can get. Like, you're selling being awkward way too well, man.
Yeah. He's the smoothest son of a bitch in True Blood.
Yeah,
he really is.
He was Randall Flagg.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's true.
Still need to watch The Stand. Haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, I've been kind of putting that one off.
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, let's move on from Godzilla versus Kong, because everybody has seen Godzilla. And you know what I've been impressed about? Last word on Godzilla versus Kong. The internet, at least not that I've seen, has not spoiled probably the most jaw-dropping surprise in it. In the third act. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh crap, this is going to be all over the internet. But they've been pretty cool about keeping that a secret.
Who, Baragon?
No. So if you haven't watched Godzilla versus Kong, hopefully it hasn't been spoiled for you yet. But anyway, watch it because it's good.
And I'm hoping that if it's successful enough, we get another MonsterVerse movie. Really crossing my fingers there.
We need a Rodan movie. Rodan got
Mothra.
a raw deal
Mothra
in
movie.
King of the Monsters. No, but see, Mothra, I'm still pissed that Rodan got a raw deal in King of the Monsters. Mothra actually at least got some camera time.
No, you're all wrong. We need a Jet Jaguar movie, and we need it now.
Right. You're right. The world needs Jet Jaguar now more than ever. And Pacific Rim. They could cross over with Pacific Rim.
and Ultraman, giant robot versus Ultraman.
We are getting Shin Ultraman, so there's that to look forward to.
All right, let's move on to our topic, which anybody who's listened to more than 2 episodes of this podcast knows that we fucking love Rampage. We don't just love Rampage, we fucking love Rampage. This time I'm earning the explicit, Korea.
Yeah.
I have to check the explicit box for me. We happen to be 3 years. It's the 3rd year anniversary of Rampage. And the reason Paul is joining us is because he loves Rampage as much as we do. So we wanted to talk Rampage. As if we haven't enough.
And when we say Rampage, we mean the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson giant American kaiju film, not the Uwe Boll movies. Uwe Boll's claims that people are going to be confused between them, but so we just wanted to clarify.
We all know that Rampage, the Rock starring Rampage, lessened the value of Uwe Boll's epic trilogy. And if it weren't for this movie, it would be a household name. I mean, everybody would know. But because of Rampage, that's all. Once the lawsuit launches, then this will all get cleared up. They'll retroactively change the name, and we can all move on from that.
All I'm saying is, every time I see one of Uwe Boll's Rampage movies on DVD at the Dollar Tree across the street from me, it doesn't last more than a day there. So it's selling like hotcakes at Dollar Tree. So it's got to be doing good.
Yeah, Rampage is a glorious, epic, amazing movie, and frankly, should be the movie that the MonsterVerse creators are studying to get the shit right. Because if there's one thing this movie does that a lot of those movies struggle to do, is it has fun. It has a lot of fun with the premise and its characters, and it lets its characters have fun.
It's just fun as hell.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that should be celebrated.
I still love that there's an actual Rampage cabinet displayed prominently in the movie in their CEO's office.
Which raises so many questions that I love that are now in my brain. I'm like, okay, so definitely a multiverse. That's the one for sure. Yep, 100% a multiverse.
I think it goes back to what you were saying, Paul, about the characters in King of the Monsters versus Skull Island. All of the characters in Rampage, the human characters, and the monster characters, obviously, but the human characters are almost all cartoons. I mean, you have the evil scientist woman and her sycophant brother, and then you've got
just chewing scenes left.
Yeah, the Jeffrey Dean Morgan cowboy guy, and then you've got The Rock. His answer to every problem is to knock the guy out.
Yes, and he has like a MacGruber level of obsession with like hurting people, and he has so many great one-liners that just feel like he's in the wrestling ring again. Like he's not in a real movie. Like he'll just step out of his character and he's like strangling a guy and he's like, "Hey, it's a big arm. Don't fight it." Like I'm just like, okay, now you're just being The Rock. Like you're not even in this movie anymore, and I love it.
Do you guys know sign language at all? His symbol for himself when he would refer to himself from George was the symbol for rock.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which I thought was kind of a funny little nod.
He's amazing. And I love that you talked about the Claire Wyden character, the Malin Ackerman villain, and how cartoonish her brother. They straight up feel like villains out of a 90s family comedy. Like there's always like a male female dynamic where like one of the where the man is sort of like Slavish to the woman, and she's just this sort of like commanding sort of person. Like it's very Casper. It feels like the villain for the Casper villain.
I was going to say they reminded me of the villains from Hudson Hawk.
There you go. Yeah, that works too.
Another classic.
But there's so many one-liners in this movie, and a bunch of them were pretty big at the time. Like, who could forget? And of course, the wolf flies.
He just says what everybody's thinking, because the wolf does this little bank and land, and everyone's thinking the wolf flies, and then he goes, "Of course the wolf flies."
Love that the wolf flies. That's so great.
Yes.
So great.
One of the things, because I rewatched it in preparation for this, and of course in preparation for the celebration, and it has been a minute. It's been about 6 months since I last watched Rampage, and I got to say, one of the things I respect the most about the movie is it really lands its cheerable moments or its references. Primarily, if you have any connection with the original games, when you see Malin Ackerman at the end of that movie in a red dress, you know for a fact George is going to eat her.
Yeah.
Or as soon as they get to the city and they do that beautiful long shot of just George and Ralph running through, and you see George slam into the side of a building, I stood up and threw my arms up and cheered like at the end of Breakfast Club. Just
The one thing I wish they had done from the video game that they didn't do is there used to be a part in the video game where a train would come like a little trolley train, and you could punch it back and forth, between two monsters, and it would go faster and faster, faster. I wish they had played train ping pong in the movie, but it didn't serve the story.
It was one of those rare movies where my first thought when it came into theaters was, I'm going to see it in 4DX, because if I'm going to go in for this special effects action kaiju-rama, I want it in the most visceral, just kind of gimmicky way I can, and because it was a roller coaster ride, and it was like I was in the movie. Just like the seats moved around. I got sprayed with like water when like the water was exploding, and like the gust of air when George is screaming at you. And it really enhanced the experience.
What's great about this movie too is, and I sort of dove into some of the special features, and a lot of the special features on the disc are very like PR features. They're not really, they feel very faked for the camera. Now, that's not to say there's not some interesting information in there. And a lot of what it goes into is the practicality with which they built this movie. I mean, a lot of practical sets, a lot of practical stunts, a lot of stuff you don't really see very often these days in big budget movies. Like, they tried to go practical as much as they could and build digital around it, especially with even in like the scene where the sort of they're in the airplane and it breaks apart and they're going to fly out. That's all one giant real set that they constructed, and we're sort of like on hydraulics and moving it around. So that way the actors would sort of feel like they're in that space. And I think the movie is all the better for it. And I think that's another reason why those action sequences land so well, because even though these situations are so cartoonish, the characters are also damn charismatic, that you care about them inherently for that reason. You don't need to really have any sort of deep emotional attachment. And then the action is so well done and well photographed. Add to that, you get giant monsters, which you're gonna like anyway. It's just a blast across the board. So I actually really respected the craft that went into this movie, which is not a thing I expected to say about the video game adaptation from the 80s.
Well, it's like also in preparation, I wanted some comparisons. I was going to watch San Andreas, but I couldn't find my copy anywhere. So instead I watched Skyscraper. So I was like, oh, it's another Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson that came out around the same time. And that movie fell so flat with me because it felt like they did the exact opposite. So much of the set was CGI. Like they would have these big things happening, like he's jumping from this crane to the giant building, and it's like, yeah, but he's probably just like in front of a green screen at this moment, and you can feel it and you can see it, and there was no investment because it didn't feel like there was that risk. So you're right, when there's at least like practical sets and then digital built around it, you feel it, because they probably feel it when they're getting thrown around everywhere.
Yeah, and on the designs, I also really like the creature designs they did for the movie, because, I mean, George is basically an albino gorilla, but, you got the wolf, which is like a bat wolf, kind of dragon looking, and then you got Liz, which is like some kind of giant alligator in this version, but it kind of like, I don't know exactly how to put it, but it's like you could tell it's mutated. Like it had all those kind of growths on it, and it was all spiky and
had warthog horns coming out of its, or tusks.
Oh yeah,
coming out
yeah.
Of its
It had
mouth
the tusks.
Stuff.
Yeah. No, they really went above and beyond for the creature effects for the different monsters in this.
Well,
one.
Ralph was part porcupine too, I think, because at one point he shoots quills at a helicopter and takes it down.
It goes like random shit. And there's lines in the movie that feel so like self-referential, like making fun of how dumb it kind of is, but it's still really fun. Like at one point, one of the villains is like, also there's some bat DNA in there. Like he just says something like, it feels like a viewer being, oh yeah, they just threw some bat in too, and now it's part of fly or whatever the fuck you want to say it is. But no, I mean, I think part of the reason that works so well too is, I mean, Weta Digital did all the effects, and like George was basically already done because they had just done the Planet of the Apes movies. So they just took the technology that they used to build out like Rise and Dawn, and I think they had already done War at that point too. I don't know if War had been released, but so they just used those builds, and George was like done. So what would have taken like a year was pretty much immediately there, so they were able to focus their efforts on other things, and they kind of said that's kind of why George is the only one of them that isn't some weird hybrid animal. I mean, obviously it helps us empathize with him more and gives us sort of a relatable monster like we talked about with Kong. But it also makes sense why they're like, okay, well, we're just going to keep him an ape or a gorilla so we don't have to worry about this. And then we're going to actually design these really cool other monsters.
Well, and he's the only one that's actually played by an actor too, because
true.
the other ones were completely CG build and all of that. But George, I forget the actor who played him, but
yeah, I was reading about that. Jason Lyles, I think.
I think he was an alumni of the Apes movies, right?
He was. Yeah, and and they animated another like a squid type monster that was in the deleted scenes with Alexandra Daddario in like a cameo role. And so there was actually going to be like hints that there were other monsters like out in the world, but they decided to cut that out because they thought it sort of convoluted the overall plot, which I think is kind of a funny thing in a movie like this. Oh, we don't want this to get too convoluted.
But it would have shown more faith that we were going to get a sequel if they had kept those in, because if they didn't deal with those.
Well, there's still 2 canisters. There's 2 canisters left. Remember, they said there was 5. 3 went to Earth. 2 are still floating out there in space. They could land anywhere on Earth at any time, and we can get our giant lobster, which is all I want.
Yes.
The movie opens with Marley Shelton in space, and I'm a big Marley Shelton fan from the 90s. So like I think that she could potentially be somebody that, even though she died in an explosion, who cares? It's an action movie. She could mutate. Because in the game, it's people who mutate into the monsters. What if Marley Shelton survives and she becomes one of the mutated creatures? She could become a rat creature.
Yeah, because she was attacked by a rat.
She was fighting a rat.
Right, which I guess the rat was a reference to another version of the game that was like on one of the Atari systems.
Yeah, I was about to say for the Atari, I had it. I had the console. I read that fact earlier too. I think it was the T-Rex or something, or T-Rex.
Yeah, and they actually did intend that as like a reference to it, or like a potential setup for the sequel.
To Larry the Rat his name was Larry, because they all had weird, like the most awesome, most simple names: Ralph, George, Larry. Yeah.
Well, and it didn't, like, the movie didn't like do horribly. I mean, worldwide it made almost $500 million.
I had forgotten or never knew that it won the box office its first week of release. So I don't know if that's because it was in the beginning of April and, quote, good movies hadn't yet been released. Because, that's kind of the end of the dumping ground.
Sure.
But it made enough money. I don't know why we don't have a sequel.
From what I've been reading, it's because I not only was looking into this, I read a few articles about why there was no sequel to San Andreas, which for some reason I don't know if it was just the articles I read, but it sounds like people more want a sequel to San Andreas than Rampage, which blows my fucking mind. Don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun with San Andreas, but I had way more fun with, like, if I had to pick which Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie where he does an impossible thing in a helicopter, which is like a subgenre of its own, it's Rampage all the time.
A sequel to San Andreas would be the same movie. What more can you do with that?
That's the problem. Yeah, you can't sequelize a movie like, I mean, you can. I shouldn't say can't, but it would be very samey. I think when it comes to the Brad Payton, Dwayne Johnson filmic universe, Rampage is their magnum opus, right? I mean, this is as good as because you can see elements of this in San Andreas and even the Journey to.
I was about to say,
like, there are things in those movies that are reminiscent of this, but this is them perfecting that relation. Yeah. I mean, this is as good as it gets. I heard that there is a San Andreas sequel like in development. I don't know if that's actually happening or not, but it my mind that it was. I was like, why do we need that? Like, give us Rampage 2.
Well, the director's working on a movie called Sniper Elite, which sounds like it's based off a video game, but I'm not sure. But I mean, when it comes to anything with The Rock, he's a busy guy. They were saying with the San Andreas sequel that it's his schedule that's one of the main issues. And they did say that if they were to do a sequel, they would want to do something totally different, possibly like a giant Ring of Fire, which I'm down for.
Yeah, big Ring of Fire movie, I'm down. Maybe a volcano movie somehow. Make it do a volcano thing. I'd be down.
A sequel to Dante's Peak or Volcano? No, do a versus Dante's Peak versus Volcano.
Yeah, you know what they should do? They should bring back all those like weird movies that were kind of the same that came out at the same time and do versus movies somehow.
Oh, like Armageddon versus Deep Impact.
Right. It'd be very emotional.
A Bug's Life versus Ants.
Deep Rising versus Virus.
Oh, Virus.
But I mean, The Rock, that guy never stops. I mean, he's got his TV show, he's got movies coming out, he's got Jungle Cruise, he's got Young Rock.
Isn't he Black Adam?
He's got Black Adam coming. Which they're finally making. They casted him as Black Adam almost like 10 years ago at this point.
I don't know about 10 years, but yeah, a long time ago.
About The Rock, that you only get a guy like this once in a generation. Someone who's just a natural movie star, right? Someone who's just, when they're on the screen, they are electric and you like them and you're interested in what they're doing. And it doesn't matter what they say, how they say it, they're going to capture your attention and they're going to carry you through the movie, even if the movie sucks, right? And that's why he's so good and why I'm always so interested in what he's doing. And there aren't that many people like that anymore. I feel like, you don't see many natural movie stars. I don't know if the movies are built that way anymore. We don't get as many sort of, I don't know, like, because the blockbusters are so wrapped up in these big superhero plot lines, like it's hard to get standalone blockbusters any longer.
It sounds like you're saying that the WWF was onto something when they called him the most electrifying man in sports entertainment.
They weren't wrong. That's
back then.
Show me one other person in sports entertainment from that time that is bringing in billions of dollars at the box office in 2021.
There isn't one.
There's nobody else. So, I think they were right.
Oh, definitely. But man, I would give anything to see The Rock fight a new slew of monsters in Rampage 2.
Yep.
I need my giant lobster. Like I need my crush station,
Yeah.
I just want Subway ping pong or, whatever, trolley ping pong. I don't care what two monsters do it.
And Rampage opens up the door for so many possibilities. I mean, it'd be the easiest movie in the world to make a sequel to. I mean, hell, you could even go to the Love and Monsters route in a post-apocalyptic sense where, it starts creating a whole slew of monsters, which ends the world. I would love to see The Rock in a post-apocalyptic Rampage sequel, where he's dealing with, like, now they have to sort of restart civilization in a world of monsters that are all weird combinations of other animals. I think there's just so many different directions that could go in, and they're all fun.
And you call it World Destruction Tour after one of the games.
Just like the game.
Boom.
I used to play that all the time on Nintendo 64.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, like Rampage World Tour, Rampage Universal Tour, and you could throw in aliens because they have aliens pop up later too.
We haven't even gotten the aliens involved in this. Which, going back to the rat, Larry the Rat in the beginning, that was possibly the most well-crafted alien homage that a movie has done, but it features a giant rat. That is an accomplishment that I cannot praise the filmmaker Rampage enough about.
That opening is so great, and it's creepy, and it's a horror sequence through and through. I get goosebumps when I watch a big budget Hollywood movie that does a horror thing. It's one of the reasons I think horror fans really love Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is there's like 3 or 4 just like straight up Evil Dead horror sequences in it. And, even though it's a Spider-Man movie, you're like, yeah, but there's so much horror, and so like, I think this movie has a lot of that. I mean, for God's sakes, like within minutes of the movie beginning, like a severed hand floats by the screen. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm in for something I'm going to enjoy. But that whole sequence was awesome.
And it did it better than others that kind of did similar because there was a similar sequence in Venom. There was, the movie Life with Jake Gyllenhaal and stuff. But Rampage really outdid them.
Although Life was a close second.
Life is another one of those movies. I think of Life a lot like I think of Underwater, where they're these great sci-fi horror movies that were dumped in January that should have been bigger films that I think wide audiences would have really loved, but they weren't given the attention or respect. Like if you had put like studio advertising behind either one of those movies and released them midsummer, they would have been huge. With the cast that they had and the production value. So anyway,
giving them a cooler title that wasn't just one generic word.
I mean, Underwater, I can get that title, but Life, they could have thought of something better for that because it's so generic. People are thinking Eddie Murphy, no. David Attenborough, no. I
also like the Eddie Murphy Life, but but no, I agree. I think Life is a terrible title. I think January is a horrible time to release that movie, and it was barely advertised. I mean, that movie was on Blu-ray within like 30 days. Like it was nuts. That thing came out so fast. And I watched it and I was just like, damn, this is fun. This is good. This isn't horrible. This isn't deserving of like what it was. And
with that cast, Jake Gyllenhaal, was it Ryan Gosling?
Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds. They're interchangeable. Rebecca Ferguson, I think, was the other.
Yep.
It's like with that cast, how do you dump that in January?
Yeah, and it's creepy. I mean, it's a good anyway. Yeah, but that's the problem is studios get these movies and they don't know what to do with them because the heads change or the executives change out by the time that's released, and that guy doesn't like it, so whatever. And they spent $60 million on it, and they don't think they're gonna make it back, so they want to invest more in advertising. I mean, if you look at Rampage, I think the movie cost what, like 120 million. They spent almost 20 million more than that just to advertise it. So it's like, all told, this thing cost 250 million bucks. So that's why when you see it made like 450, well, to the studio, well, that's not as much as it sounds like. And in a movie like Life, where it costs 60 to 80 million to make it, and they spent probably, a fraction of that to advertise it, and it did not make even close to that in the box office, right? Then it's just a failure and let's move on. But that, again, there's so many great things that come out of these studios. They just don't know what to do with them.
Which is why we still have yet to get that Rampage sequel.
Mm-hmm. Someday, even if I have to take over Warner Brothers and greenlight a Fast and Furious type sprawling universe,
it could happen. I mean, we're not that far away from the movie to where I would give up total hope, and it wasn't such a bomb. And the fact that it's starring The Rock, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Oh, true.
I bet you if he said, like, I want to do this movie, it would happen. And so what we really need to do is send Dwayne Johnson letters every day from here on out. Like Shawshank Redemption style. Like we're going to send him a letter every single day until we get these library books. Like until we get Rampage 2, he will receive a letter from the fans.
And we need to tweet #continue the Rampage.
Yes.
Warner
Yes.
Brothers.
This will be our version of the Snyder Cut. Right.
Listen, Snyder fans, they're not going to continue the Snyder first. Continue the Rampage instead.
Yeah.
A more noble cause.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us for this discussion, Paul. This is it's great to gush over Rampage with someone who loves it as much as we do. I get tired of hearing these two gush about it, so I'm glad that you could join us.
It's been a beautiful 3 years of just randomly bringing up Rampage almost every episode. Like I think there was an entire season where it was brought up every single episode.
Oh yeah,
we would look for an excuse.
Yep, and we didn't have to look far.
I'm glad I could be here.
Where can our listeners find you if they want more of you?
Yes. Well, there's a lot of me out there online. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm on the Dead Ringers podcast, where we do horror double features, usually movies with sort of shared DNA. Kind of do like an analysis of each one and kind of talk about similarities and differences. And then I do something Scream Addicts with my co-host Jinx, Jason Jinx Jenkins, who writes for many publications and has been doing that show for a while. And we do a Hammer show under that banner called the Hammer Pub, where we do commentaries for all of the Hammer horror movies. So we're slowly making our way through the Hammer horror filmography. So
have you gotten to the Snorkel yet?
We have not gotten to the Snorkel.
That's my favorite.
We're big Hammer fans. It's very fun, and it's just we have a few drinks and we talk through the movie. We often get off on random tangents. It's pretty relaxed. It's not like an intensive commentary, but we get deep on the movies and we have guests and things like that. So if you're at all interested in Hammer, check that out. And then also I do a column on Bloody Disgusting called Hammer Factory, where I break down the Scream Factory releases of Hammer movies and talk about sort of the context of the film, when it was made. Because I'm really interested in Hammer's sort of story, because they had just such an interesting, like the makings of these movies were often even more interesting than some of the movies themselves. Then I go into the movie, I go into the release. It's sort of a review, but more of an analysis of the film. So that's called Hammer Factory, and that's on Bloody Disgusting. And you can find all this stuff on my Twitter feed at the very modest handle at PaulIsGreat2000.
Great. We'll link that in the show description as well. So if people don't remember that, they can just click. The three of us you can find on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at iHorror. You can find us at iHorror.com, which is where we all call home. Am I missing anything, Kriya? You have your finger on the pulse of our socials.
I mean, I'll probably make a letterbox list again.
Letterbox.
If people want to see what movies we mention. Surprisingly, Magic Mike XXL and Mamma Mia Here We Go Again won't be mentioned or featured on that letterbox list, except now they will, because I just mentioned
now
them.
They will.
Oh, shit, you did it.
All right. So that's where to find us. Thanks again, Paul, for joining us for this look at Rampage. And everyone, if you haven't seen Rampage, see Rampage. That's your homework. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. So for me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Correa.
I'm Paul Farrell.
Keep your eye on horror.